morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We are delighted to welcome you to this latest edition of Farhang Connect. I am Reza Deghati, Executive Director of Farhang Foundation here in Los Angeles. We are a member-supported, non-political, non-religious, not-for-profit organization with the sole mission to celebrate and promote Iranian art and culture for the benefit of the community at large. Today, we are delighted to welcome you from all over the globe for a very special conversation with one of the world's leading photographers and humanists. Reza Deghati, known worldwide as simply Reza, is one of the globe's most renowned photojournalists and humanitarians. Spanning a career of over 40 years, he has worked all over the world, most notably for National Geographic. His assignments have taken him to over 100 countries as a witness to humanity's conflicts and catastrophes. His work is featured in international publications, including National Geographic, Time, Stern, Newsweek, El País, Paris Match, and many more, as well as a series of books, exhibitions, and documentaries. Along with his work as a photographer since 1983, Mr. Deghati has been a volunteer committed to the training of youth and women in conflict-ridden societies using the language of image to help them strive for a better world. In 2001, he founded the Aina World. In Afghanistan, a new generation of NGO which trains populations in information and communications through the development of educational tools and adapted media. While pursuing his reportage for international media outlets, Reza continued to conduct workshops on the language of images through his association with the Reza Visual Academy. Following his work on Memories of Exile, which was shown at the Louvre Carousel in 1998, he has shared his humanitarian vision through a series of monumental installations, among them Crossing Destinies, shown on the fences of the Luxembourg Gardens in Paris, One World, One Tribe in Washington, D.C., War plus Peace at the Khan Memorial, Hope in Doha, Windows of the Soul in Corsica, plus 250 photographic exhibitions throughout the world, including major installations on the bank of the River Seine, at Kew Gardens in London, Land of Tolerance at the United Nations headquarters in New York City, the European Parliament in Brussels, as well as UNESCO and the Elegance of Fire presented at the Petit Palais in Paris. In 2015, the giant panorama, A Dream of Humanity, was featured along the banks of the River Seine, showing portraits of refugees from around the world, both taken by Mr. Deghati as well as refugee children from Iraqi Kurdistan, who were trained as camp reporters at workshops organized by the Reza Visual Academy. Mr. Deghati has authored 30 books and has been the recipient of numerous international awards. He is a fellow and explorer of the National Geographic Society and a senior fellow at the Ahmadshah Foundation. His work has been recognized by World Press Photo, and he has received the Infinity Award from the International Center of Photography, the Lucy Award, an honorary medal from the University of Missouri, and the honorary degree of Doctor Honoris Causa from the American University of Paris. He has also been appointed one of France's top honors as a Chevalier of the National Order of Merit. Today, Mr. Deghati will be joined in conversation with Dr. Houman Sarshar. Dr. Sarshar received his PhD in comparative literature from Columbia University. He's an independent scholar, a consulting editor, and a contributing author to the Encyclopedia Iranica, as well as a contributing author to the Encyclopedia of Jews in the Islamic World. To date, Dr. Sarshar has edited and co-edited 7 volumes on the history of Jews in Iran, among them Esther's Children, A Portrait of Iranian Jews, and the Jewish Communities of Iran, Entries on the Judeo-Persian Communities of Iran, published by the Encyclopedia Iranica. He has also published numerous articles on modern Persian literature, including entries on Nima Yushij and Sohrab Sepehri for the Encyclopedia Iranica. In addition to his academic writings, Dr. Sarshar is a private art collector of modern Iranian art with a collection of nearly 200 museum quality works by all the leading artists of the movement. Dr. Sarshar is also the founder of the Kimia Foundation, a cultural foundation dedicated to promoting the art, culture, and history of Iran. With over 5,000 original photographs, the Kimia Foundation holds the largest archive of Qajar court photography outside of the Golestan Palace in Tehran. Dr. Sarshar is presently working on his next book about the role of boy dancers in the history of Iran's entertainment world. And we are also proud to have him on the board of Farhang Foundation's Fine Arts Council. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Reza Deghati and Dr. Houman Sarshar. Greetings and welcome, Mr. Deghati, Dr. Sarshar. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be part of this edition of Farhang Connect.
Thank you for the podium.
Thank you for presentation.
I will now step back and let Houman John take over from here, and I look forward to this conversation, and I will be back towards the end of the program for a short Q&A. Thank you again, and I will see you shortly.
Thank you very much, Ali Reza, for that wonderful introduction of Mr. Deghati. Without further ado, we will start our discussions. We're going to go through a very brief question and answer about your biography, and then we will move on to your work as a photojournalist. We know that you were born in Tabriz in 1952. And from what I've learned, at some point in your early 20s, you got into some political trouble for the photographs that you had taken. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with you, Doctor. I started photography, learning photography when I was 13 years old. In Tabriz, which there was no teacher or no way to learn about photography. So it has been like 2-3 years, which I have tried everything to get to know the photography. And finally, I got it in a way that my passion, and it has become the total my passion. There was two main things that brought me to photography, actually. The one was that I was always attracted and wondered by the beauty of nature, by everything that was beautiful in my eyes, by the flowers, by clouds, by everything, and the humans. So I wanted to share this with the people. In the meantime, I was really touched when I was seeing some social injustice, like homeless people, like kids with no shoes going around. And this was also, as a kid, it was hurting me. So I wanted to really show and share with the people. That's how I came to photography, because I thought that the image has the possibility to do this. One of the first things which I did was publishing a newspaper, a magazine in my high school. When we were in the Bandar Abbas city, my father was there. It was called Parvaz, which meaning to fly or to soar. But 2 days after I published this news magazine in my high school, I was arrested by SAWAK security people, and all my magazines were gathered and turned on, and I was beaten very badly. Why you publish newspaper? Why you publish magazine? And so this was really tough for me as a 16-year-old boy. Just wanted to show what was around me. Later, I started doing more photography in the same way. And mainly I was using the university's wall by showing what was around, like around Tehran, people that were a lot of people living in the, what we call it, the shanty towns. Or I was traveling to different part of the Iran and like Baluchistan. And when I was seeing that the poverty in which the people living, it was hurting me as a young boy, as a young artist, that saying that why people should live like this in a country that it's really prosperous, it's really becoming one of the leading countries in the region. So my idea was, if I show these pictures, people will change it. This was a naive way maybe for me. And I was putting this on the wall of the universities. That's where I was studying architecture in the fine arts faculty of Tehran. I started at 19 years old doing this and studying architectures. Was putting these pictures around for 3 years. Finally, when I was 22 years, again, I was arrested by SAVAK, and I spent 3 years in prison for this. I was tortured over 5 months for different reasons, asking me if I knew people that helping me in this matter. Anyway, that this is how I find out that the power of the photography. This gave me energy and understanding that what I knew actually, that photography is a real tool for a lot of different things. And so after I came out of prison, I went back to architecture, doing my architecture work, and then there was a demonstration start in Tehran, and I started photographing the demonstration. And immediately, very soon, I was seen by the other foreign correspondent that coming to cover, and they saw my pictures and they said, wow, these are fantastic pictures. These are very high quality. I didn't know about it because, you know, a lot of people that was around me, just few people, they have seen my pictures. I had no idea what was the quality of the photography that I was doing. So I got a connection with the Newsweek, and Newsweek saw my pictures and they asked me to work for them. Then there was a French agency called SIPA Press. They also asked me to work with them. And through SIPA, which was a photography agency, one of the leading photo agency at the time, I had access to more than 20,000 leading magazine and newspapers all around the world in the 5 continents. That made me, during the revolution and especially after, a very powerful tool they give me. So I was one of the first photographer or journalists that immediately started to showing the reality of this Islamic Republic. I was probably the first one that started showing to the world that these are criminals, that they are fighting against the Baluch in Iran, they are fighting against Turkmen, they are fighting against Kurdish people. And my photograph, as I said, spreading all around the world, 20,000 leading magazine, getting those pictures and publishing, made me.
This is, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and this has led for some of our Iranian audiences who may not know, this has actually led to some of the most iconic photography of the Iranian Revolution, some of the earliest photographs of Ayatollah Khomeini for the press. And after the revolution, you were also, the images that are burned in my own memory of people climbing the walls of the American embassy. These have all, your eye really was the only eye there showing the rest of the world what was going on in Iran. And so this was the beginning of your photojournalism, but I don't think that many of us know as much about the photographs that got you in trouble as you were telling us about the Baluch and everybody else that was going on in Iran, everything else.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the things that the Islamic Republic they done immediately, the first things they have done was starting attacking any other people that demonstrating that they were not Islamic for them, like students, university, and a woman. There was a huge woman march against
hijab.
the hijab, and it was just months after the revolution, where everybody was thinking that everybody has believed what Khomeini was saying. All the world was believing. There was just very few people that understand that this man is a devil. So those pictures, it was one of the first pictures of me published, that how they're attacking the woman. And it made all around the world, suddenly people see that what's happened, why they're attacking women, and the story of hijab. Then I showed that how they were attacking minorities, like religious minority, like Sunnis in Balochistan. The first group of the committee members or Basiji or Revolutionary Guard. Then they start fighting against the Kurdish people. And this is where I was able to go walking through the mountains, hiding myself from the army and from the Revolutionary Guard, because they have encircled many of the Kurdish cities like Sanandaj, Marivan, Bane, and I was able to walking in the mountain and going from village to village, sometimes days, to reach those cities, and being the only photographer, only journalist in those places, in those cities. And obviously after, when I was coming out, the pictures were published all around the world. While before this, the government, they were thinking that they have closed all the doors and no journalists, nobody is able to go there. This was the time before internet, before mobile phone, before all the connection that we have now. So one man with one camera, being in a city that is besieged and shelling and airplane coming and bombing the local people, this was huge impact all around the world. And the first was publishing my pictures in the magazine. And then some of those magazines coming to Iran and Iranian people seeing what's happening there through the foreign magazine. And then also what I was doing, I was making a double print and I was giving to the Iranian different groups saying that, hey, you can publish it. Don't put my name on it. Just show to the world and show to the Iranian what this government doing. And one of the reasons that I was signing a Reza, because as you know, now we are three here and two of us has Reza as the name. Reza is the most common name in Iran, and I wanted to be anonymous. That's how putting Reza, it was making me almost anonymous, but soon they find out about it. And I heard that they have put my name on the hit list. This was like last months of the 80s. So I had to flee Iran, and finally I was able to get out in March 81, which I have never been back there. But the pictures that maybe you remember also was the hostage taken in the US Embassy. These are all my photograph. I was the only photographer being there where they start going over the wall. And also there's some pictures of the American.
Right, leaving the embassy with their eyes bandaged and everything. So, so you were forced into exile in 1981. And, you know, as I look at your career, I can certainly, with these explanations, understand what your passion for photojournalism. But you went on to also take on a very humanitarian approach as a photojournalist and dedicate a tremendous amount of your life, time, energy to various humanitarian efforts like the Aina project in Afghanistan or the project in Rwanda after the war with the 12,000 photographs of the portraits of the children. And as you tell us a little bit more about that, I want to ask you a general question that I would like to have as a theme for our conversation, which is why photography? You've told us a little bit about the value of being a photojournalist and showing to being a witness to atrocities that other people don't see. But that's not all you have done. A lot of your photographs are haunting images of the human soul, of the human condition. So what exactly is it about the camera? What is it about the lens? What is it about the ability to capture that fleeting instant in a human experience that has drawn you so much to it, not just as a photojournalist, but also as an artist and as a witness to humanity?
I think that this has come with my deep understanding of the fact that the world is becoming one world. This very soon in my young age, I saw that there is some things happening and the world is getting connected. And this connection of all the people of the world will need one language. And what was this language? I was searching for it. I was looking for it. And finally, I say, well, this is the photography. The photography is the common language of the humanity in the 21st century. Even when we look back to our history, what is remaining of the Persepolis, of all of them, are the frescoes, are the images that we saw on the wall, on the stones. So all this make me think that photography in the general and image in general, it's going to be the common language of the humanity on the 21st century, which is happening now, which is, I mean, when Ali Reza was telling about my exhibition, yeah, I have done a couple of hundred exhibitions in 100 countries. Many of them, I don't speak the languages, but the people, they understand this. So more and more, I see the impact of the photography, impact of the images on the people is make me convinced that this is the most powerful tool that we had ever invented. That's the reason that I more and more doing everything with photography by publishing books, exhibitions, documentaries. There are tens of documentaries on my works also by many different TVs all around the world. But then very soon I realized that I'm not enough. One person is not enough. Because the people who are living and suffering, who are living under the war and the conflict, they can show us also what's happening to them. So that's how I started very soon from 1983, actually, starting every time going to one of those countries, training people. I was buying cameras, all my finance going to this, buying cameras, preparing the trainings. It was happening in the Afghanistan refugee camps, then in townships in the South Africa in '85, and ongoing every year. I was doing this in every conflict, every places. Many of those people that I have trained, they have become very famous photographer or journalists. They have got Pulitzer prizes. They have got a lot of different prizes. But in the meantime, they are also spreading their stories. And this is not only the professional photographer. I find out that children that living in the refugee camps, for example, and they have no education, they can also show us the reality of refugee camps from inside. I find out also that many of the youth, like in the European very poor suburbs or in Buenos Aires, in the favela of the different cities, they could also, if they have a camera, if they are really taught how to tell their stories, how to talk about their problems, they could come up with incredible photograph that none of us have seen and none of us we can do it. So photography creating connection between individual, between people, between culture, and that is the best and fastest way to create this connection. You look for one photograph, one nation, and you may get the whole story of a nation through one photograph. So that's how I came to photography. I stay in photography, and I'm training, still teaching and training all over the world photography, because I really believe that this is a very, very powerful tool.
I couldn't agree with you more. As you were talking, one of the images that flashed through my head, for example, is the image taken by one of your young children in a refugee camp of those frozen shoes. That it's just so haunting and so striking. Can you tell us a little bit about that photograph? How did it come about?
This is when the war in Iraq started, and then Syria, they had millions of the Syrian and Iraqi refugees. Many of them they poured in the Iraqi Kurdistan. You know, inside Iraq we have this autonomous Kurdistan, which is called Iraqi Kurdistan, and they were so generous, really generous, more than everybody in the world. That even if there are 4 million, they accepted 1.8 million refugees, almost half of their population. And they have built camps everywhere. So in one of those camps that were mainly the Syrian refugee living there, I was doing a film for a French TV Arte. And so I stayed there for weeks and then months, going and coming back, teaching photography to the children. This third days, which I have started teaching, there were children between 11 to 15 years old, never touched camera, never saw a camera. They even didn't have a mobile phone or doing pictures, none of those things. But what I was teaching them, saying that this is not about photography. I'm going to give you a tool that you could tell your own story inside the camp and everybody will understand it. And those kids, they really mean it. They understand it. They wanted to show it. So one of the girls was Maya Rostam. The third days she was very late to the classroom. And I asked him, why you are late? And she showed me her camera, which has, for 3 days only, she had got the camera, saying, Master, this is the reason which I'm late, because my shoes were frozen in this. We were in the winter, very cold winter, living in the tent. Imagine, I was living there also. So my shoes was frozen. That's why I'm late. I have to wait 1 hour. And this was, for me, was the award or best reward I could ever think of, the teaching 40 years, finally giving this girl of the 12 years old the understanding that, yes, you can tell your story with one picture. And she told us, you see how touching is just one picture, telling the whole story of the refugees in a cold winter, living in the tent. Maya Rostam.
And what an apt name. But I think you've had many other emotional rewards for your work. I'm thinking about the Rwanda Project, the portraits you took of the lost children who I think many were able to reconnect with their families as a result of the project. Can you tell us a little bit about the project, please?
Almost every time which I see a social problem or human problem, human condition problem, the first question comes in my mind is photography could find a solution for this? And in many times find it. The story of those portraits, actually, it was initiated by UNICEF and International Red Cross inside the refugee camps after the Rwanda and Burundi genocide. I have been photographing this unfortunate tragedy. 800,000 people were killed and 2 million were refugees. And UNICEF and Red Cross, they have gathered 12,000 children under 18, which they didn't know where the parents are. They have this idea of, if we could photograph this. And so I teach and other refugees, and I brought 600 roll films from Paris and the cameras, and I mean, in reality, I managed them to take those 12,000 portraits, which takes months, but then making exhibition in the gallery inside the refugee camps. This is probably the world's biggest portrait exhibition ever in the world, 12,000 portraits. And we invited people to come and look for it if they find someone. You know, again, with this project of the photography, 3,500 children, they were united with their families only thanks to one photography project. That's what more and more give me this understanding that, yes, photography could find some solution for a lot of problem that we may have.
You know, as one of your fans, really, I've fallen in love with your work. And for me, I think the biggest impact you have on me as one of your viewers is your uncanny ability to capture the human soul in a photograph. One of the images that comes to mind is the silence, that African man who's holding his face, these piercing blue eyes with a tremendous sadness in his eyes. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And I'm going to also ask you about a few more photographs as we go through this, because I would love to hear either the story behind them or your own impression of them as to why you think they're such striking images.
Over the years of the photographing people and being in contact with them, obviously, I find that the eyes are the windows to the soul of the people. But also I understand that you don't open your windows to foreigners. You have to connect with someone. You have to trust someone to open your windows to the soul of you. So over years, meeting people, for me, every time I saw someone I want to photograph, it looks like I'm there for him. I'm there to understand his story. I'm really becoming like dust under the feet of the people which I'm photographing. And they feel it. People, they feel that I'm there for their stories. I'm not there to make big pictures for me, for my name. So this trust between me and the people which I'm photographing is the key to my portrait, the trust. They trust me because they find that I'm really interested in their stories. The story of this African man, it's tragedy. It happened after this Rwanda and Burundi tragedy. As I said, 800,000 people were killed. His family, entire family, were killed in front of his eyes. And when I say entire family, it means that his wife, his brothers, sisters, children. There was only one girl, Alphonsine, that she was 16 years old, and it was her granddaughter. This was only one left of the whole family. But Alphonsine was also raped by the soldiers, and she got pregnant by enemy soldiers. And the village people, they wanted her to give, not to give birth to the child, to abortion, and she wanted to keep the child, saying that this is my child, doesn't matter, it's a rape child, I really wanted to have. So her grandfather was sitting in front of the door of their one room that they have in the village, and to protect her granddaughter and the baby that she had. But he has lost speech. He was not talking to anybody. He was just looking there. And I could see in his eyes what he has seen, because I have seen the same scene. I have seen how the people were killed. Not his family, but other people. So that's how I think that somehow he understands that I understand him. He understands that I know what he has seen because I have seen the same things. That's why this portrait has become, as you say, one of the portraits that you could watch it long time. In the meantime, you could not watch it. That's how hurt you and go really inside your heart.
Wounded Innocence, that beautiful little Afghan girl with the kohl around her eyes and henna in her hair.
I realized also very soon, photographing the war and conflict, that even the major media showing us always military people fightings in the fightings, or showing us only the destructions and the wounded and the dead people, but the real people that suffer of any war, of any conflict, are the children. And then the women. These are the two categories of the people that suffer most from all kind of the disaster, war, conflict, and anything. So I concentrated more also showing the suffering of the children in the war zone and the conflict. In the meantime, even if, as you can imagine, being in the war zone and conflict, I have seen tens of thousands of the bodies, part of the bodies, wounded people, the destructed houses everywhere. I mean, the war is not what you see in the Hollywood movies. The war is 1,000 times much more stronger than what the best Hollywood movie could show about the war. So, but I know also that the people, they don't want to watch the dead bodies. They don't want to watch wounded people. They don't want to watch more of the hospital and everything. But they could watch and see everything in the eyes of a child like this one, because she has been in a village that got bombed for 4 or 5 years in Afghan history. I mean, the biggest bombardment ever happened in Afghanistan was in the village that she was living, Tora Bora. And I saw her in the middle of the ruins. I could take the whole ruins but then I realized that no, ruins and the suffering and everything is in her eyes. That's why this picture also is a haunting, and it tells the whole story of the suffering of the humanity in one picture, in her eyes.
The witness, I believe, is a Kurdish father holding his little girl in his arms with bandages on her eye, which really, I think, is in such a powerful way delivers this message that really it is the children and the women who suffer most during these often absurd conflicts over power.
This picture has two incredible stories. One of it is that it's happened in the city of the Mahabad in Iran, Iranian Kurdistan. The city was surrounded by Iranian Revolutionary Guard, by the Islamic Guards, actually. They were fighting and shooting everywhere, regardless of the houses and everything. And we were just few photographers at this moment that we were able to get in. This was a little, I don't know if it was a boy or girl. I never understand it, actually, to tell you the truth. But she or he has got a shrapnel of explosion that was done by the Revolutionary Guard. Now, the other story of this picture is that months or 2 months after Iran-Iraqi war started, and suddenly I saw that only the pictures of the little boy or girl, not the father, because the father has this Kurdish turban that everybody understands. His or her picture was printed all over Iran, writing, "This is the crime of the Saddam Hussein Iraqis attacking the Iranian civilian."
Oh, wow. So one of the pictures for which you were potentially exiled from Iran was reappropriated by the government for their own propaganda purposes.
Actually, it was not my pictures. If you find the other picture, it's a different angle.
Oh,
my picture was both of them, but some other photographer that they have taken from the angle that is a little different, their picture were used by the government, you making propaganda, saying that this is a crime of the Saddam Hussein, while this was their own crime, you know. This also shows also the what is the reality of this Islamic Republic, of this government.
I think also, in addition to showing the atrocities that children suffer, I think one of the beauties of your camera is the way in which you've captured the resilience of children at times of war. Your two pictures come to mind. One that it just always stops me dead in my tracks, which is, I believe it's called The Escape, is a little boy holding up a barbed wire fence with, I imagine, his sister or his friend crawling under. And then the other one is two boys holding the carcass of a television frame as they're crossing the street in what is obviously a war-torn, I imagine, Afghanistan, but I may be wrong. Where were those photographs taken?
The first one was in a camp in Pakistan. And again, the children, when they go through the war, they are not anymore children. You know, suddenly they became a 50-year-old man. And that's what I have seen also. The trauma of a war is such a strong on the children that they lose their childhood immediately. And this is really haunting me all the time, seeing these children that has been in a war zone and conflict. Suddenly, their face changed. They became like a 50-year-old man and woman who they are. So yes, in the meantime, as you said, the best word used is resilience. I have seen the resilience is also so high in the war zone, in the conflict. More the situation became difficult for the people, more you see that this incredible power of the life coming up. And there's one Iranian poem that's Ari Ari Zindagi Zibast. One of the Iranian poets says, yes, yes, the life is beautiful, and it's fantastic poetry. And I always think about this. So that's why I concentrate a lot on the children photography.
And some of your photographs seem to have a very poignant sense of political criticism and irony and just lucidity that is also, again, very striking. Thinking particularly about that image of those three women in Afghanistan wearing the burqa and reading a magazine. I think that may have something to do with your Aina project. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that photograph.
This is a part of the whole story that when Afghanistan was liberated from Taliban 20 years ago, I mean, actually, it's a very sad situation now these days that's happening in Afghanistan. But 20 years ago, there was a big hope that the Afghan people, they thought that they were liberated from Taliban, and all this coalition forces, they came, and the Taliban has gone, Al-Qaeda has gone, and everybody was thinking that, okay, the country is coming out. But for me was, you cannot bring democracy to a country if you don't create a media, independent media. And nobody wanted to take care of it. Nobody, no government, nobody was thinking that is necessary. That's why in 2001, I created this independent an NGO, non-for-profit, by auctioning my camera, by auctioning my prints in French Senate. I started this NGO that the main goal was bring the independent media, teach especially Afghan women journalism. So, I mean, over 20 years, maybe we have taught more than 1,500 Afghan men and women in a very, very high international level. They got Pulitzer Prize, they got nominated to Emmy Award, they got almost all the existing prizes and awards all around the world. They created TVs, they created magazine. These pictures that you see, this is the first magazine that I did for the women in Afghanistan, in Aina actually did, which was called Malala, the first Afghan woman magazine. We created also a radio station, which is called Afghan Women Voices. And this is the first radio station in Afghanistan, independent, that was done only by women that doing it. We created mobile cinema, showing the educational film to the villages. So everything that image and media could bring to the country, that's what the Aina was doing over 20 years. And this is one of the examples. We did also, one of the things which I did that it was very meaningful for me, I started a kids magazine for the children. They didn't have any magazine, which was distributed free to villages, and I called it Parvaz. You remember, this is the name which I have given to my first magazine when I was 16 years old. I did, and I was arrested. So after 35 years, I did now the same magazine with the same name, but for the Afghan children.
How about that picture of the little boy leaning on his school desk? Was that, it looks like Persian alphabet, but I'm not sure. Was that taken in Iran or also in Afghanistan?
In Iran, it is in the Kurdistan, Iranian Kurdistan. When the Revolutionary Guard and the airplane and started bombing the villages and houses in Kurdistan, as I told, I was at those years, those months, I was the only journalist that was going from village to village, walking in the mountains. And one day in one of the villages that was under bombardment, the airplane was coming and bombing around, and walking on the village, I heard like school going on, children's, and I thought it's very strange. There's a war going on, and what is the school? So I went there, and it was a school. The classroom was there, and I told teacher, well, there's a war here. And he said, I know, but you know, we Kurdish people, we know how important is education. And the war that started, these mullahs, the war will go on for 40 years. I always remember this word. You know, it was in 1979, 80. He's telling me, young teacher, that these mullahs will bring war for 40 years, and we cannot stop education. Whatever happened, we have to educate our children, even in the wartime. But then I saw these children, and you look to his eyes, he wasn't there, he was somewhere else. He didn't know what is happening. He didn't know why this airplane, he didn't know why this explosion going on. But he was holding his book like a treasure also. And you look to his book, it's almost an old book, it's teared up, I mean, but this gave me an incredible courage also to see that, look at this teacher. Now, 40 years after, I just think about him, saying that how visionary he was, that these mullahs will bring 40 years of war to our country. So we have to keep educating our children.
And in your career, all of your photography hasn't been exclusively photojournalism. You've worked with National Geographic. I imagine a lot of those photographs were also scenic, just photographs of nature. You also did a photograph of the Prince of Travelers, which is, again, another one of your iconic images. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, you know, the reality is that the photograph of me that is known to the world, obviously it's more of the conflict and, as you say, the war. But my main goal is human history. My main goal is photograph the beauty of the life, the beauty of humanity, the beauty of our planet, because you can only protect something if you love it. So I want with my photograph also to bring those faces that people can look to it and love the humanity. Bringing the pictures of the landscape, that they can look to this landscape and love the nature. This is my main goal, is it? And half, maybe more than half of my works is in this way, which is not known to the world, which nobody has seen many of those pictures. I have 2 million pictures in my Paris studio office. Just maybe less than 50,000 of them it's known to the world. And these pictures of the Prince of Travelers or Sinbad, it's one of them. I did it in a story that I was traveling in the Nile Delta for 6 months. And I needed a small boat, passenger boat, that like a taxi that could take me to both sides of the Nile River. And he had a boat. He was like a taxi driver, boat captain. And I hired for 4 days, traveling with him. In 4 days, we became very close friends, you know, staying with him for 4 days and traveling. And he was like my assistant also, helping me. So I take like maybe 2 or 3 pictures of him only. I was so busy on my story. And then later, I find that this portrait is one of my portraits that touch a lot of people, that people look on it, love it, and they think that this is one of the best image of the humans. You know, it's really, that's what I hear a lot of people saying about it. So I do have those kind of the pictures, hundreds of thousands, which is still in my archives, and I haven't touched them.
And the last image I wanted to, well, there's 2 more photographs I wanted to ask you about. One is the one of Ahmadshah Massoud, and the last one is the 3 Abrahams.
Ahmadshah Massoud, he is probably one of the very important personality in the past 40 years in the history of the region. Why? He was an Afghan civil engineer in the 80s when Afghanistan was occupied by Soviet Union militaries, 100,000 soldiers, huge industry of the militaries came and invaded Afghanistan. So little by little, there was a very few resistance, but Ahmadshah Massoud, this civil engineer, 30 years old, he really started very intelligent and getting understanding how he can fight the Soviet army. Nobody was able at the time in the 80s of thinking that it's possible to defeat Soviet army. In the 80s, the Soviet Union was huge, important, big. But he was the one that saying that, well, yeah, I will defeat them. I was hearing that this young man starting a resistance. So it takes me 3 months walking in the mountains in Afghanistan, village by village, hidings. 3 times I got ambushed by the Soviet militaries that they wanted to kill me or arrest me. I escaped this, but finally I find him. And immediately when I find him, I realized that, man, he's the man of the history. He's like, in Iran history, we had Babak Khorramdin, we had Abu Muslim Khorasani, we had Aryo Barzan. These are the main names of the resistance of the Persian stories. And Ahmadshah Massoud is one of them, history people. He defeated finally Soviet Union. In 89, the last soldier of the Soviet Union left Afghanistan in 15 February 89, and the wall of the Berlin Wall, which means the Soviet Union, collapsed in November, 10 months after. Wow. So that's why he's important. That's why in history, later the historian will come up with my conclusion saying that he is one of the main reasons of the collapse of Soviet Union. He's the one that pushed the war by defeating the Soviet army that nobody could believe that is going to be defeated.
And the three Abrahams?
Three Abrahams story is unbelievable. I was doing a story on Abraham, the prophet Abraham. The reason which I was doing it, that after years and years seeing that how all this religion fighting each other in the name of God, because the Christian, the Muslim, the Jewish, they are somehow in a constant conflict with each other for different reasons. In the history, probably the most important number of the people that were killed in the whole human history were killed in the name of the God, because everybody think that his God is better than the other God. So we came up in National Geographic with this idea, why not to do a story about Abraham? Because Abraham is the founding father of these three religions. But maybe just bringing up this, we may just tickle a little people's mind saying that, hey, wait a minute, you all have the same father, Muslim, Christian, Jewish. Why are you fighting each other? What is the reason? So this was maybe a naive idea, but still I think that if people know the history, it will make a better future for the humanity. And one day in Jerusalem, photographing different stories and different places, I suddenly realized that there were Muslims having Abraham name as Ibrahim, that Christian, it's called Abraham, and the Jewish called Avram. So this is one name that bring all these three religions together. The founding father, they keep calling their children. And I thought, well, maybe I could find the three children, one Muslim, one Christian, one Jewish, that has the same name, and 13 years old. The reason I picked up 13 years old, because that's where I started photography. I started photography when I was 13 years old, and I wanted to see how it looks like that. So it takes me 8 days with a couple of assistants, one Christian, one from Jewish community, one from Muslim, Palestinian community. Finally, not only to find them, but also to get the security clearance, to get the approval of the parents. So, I mean, it shows me how complicated the whole story. Yeah. 8 days, just bringing this one pictures together. But what's happened, this is the most important for me, this story. The kids knew about, their parents, they have told that, you know, there's a photographer want to take pictures of the three child that are Abraham. So they brought them, and I have found a school, one of the Jewish school in the Jerusalem that has this view, and they had I got the permission to go in the rooftop, bring them there, so you could see the wall and also the mosque, both of them in the same time, at the pictures in the background. The kids, when they came on the roof, and I asked them, could you please go and stand there? They were looking to each other like the worst enemy. Unbelievable. They really almost coming with the guards, you know, they're like this. So I asked parent, assistant, everybody saying that, okay, let them there and just come with me in the end of the roof, like 15 meters behind them, and make like we are preparing my cameras or tripod or whatever. Just don't look at them. Let them stay together. Okay. Those three kids that they were coming and looking to each other as an enemy, like 3 minutes after, they have become the best friends. They were talking about what is their sport doing, how is their school, what is their main video games that they're playing, what PlayStation. I mean, like any other kids, they didn't want to leave each other after. That's why you look at their pictures, the way that they're holding each other, the body language, it's there. That's the why I think that this concept and idea of Tree Abraham is important to tell about it and to explain to the people.
So before we move to Ali Reza for him to guide the question and answer, I would like to ask you the first question.
Please.
2 million photographs, almost 55 years behind the camera, so many heart-wrenching atrocities, 30 books, 250 exhibitions, many honors, including the Chevalier d'Honneur. If you had to look back at the trajectory of your life and do it all over again, would you? And if you would, is there anything you would change about it?
In what I have done?
Yes.
Well, not really. I will, well, one thing that it stopped me by doing a lot of things which I wanted to do. And this was the fact that I'm alone. And this is the one thing that it's always hurt me, that I'm convinced that what I'm doing is helping the world. I'm convinced that those training and education and it's really important for the world. But I wasn't able to convince other people to come with me and to help me and to do this. So this is one thing that always somehow in hurting me, that I wasn't able to give this message to the other people. Then comes this saying that, well, I mean, that this is your fate. That's what you have to do. That's you. You have to go and like the Sisyphe, you know.
Sisyphus, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for very, very thoughtful questions and the selection of the pictures.
My pleasure.
It has been really riveting to listen to your conversation, and I just wanted to get to some of the questions from the public. We've got lots of questions. We don't have a lot of time, but we want to hit on some of them. Our first question is from Naveed, who's asking, with all your photographs have a story behind them. Which one would you consider the one that most connected with you or moved you more than any other? That's a tough question to answer, I'm sure.
Actually, no, it is not tough. What he's referring is my next picture.
That's a good answer.
That's what I always looking, that my next pictures will have this power, and that's what is keep going on it. I don't look back, actually. What I've done is done. Now I'm always looking, what is the next story in the next picture?
That's a positive outlook too. Our next question is for Sanam, who's asking, how did you get involved with National Geographic in the first place?
Wow. In 1990, after 10 years of covering all the wars in the Middle East and especially Afghanistan, I was asked by the United Nations, because of all the years which I have going in Afghanistan, and I was a Time magazine correspondent, Life correspondent, and many other publications doing Afghanistan story. So everybody knew that I'm one of the very few experts in Afghanistan. So UN called me and asked me to work for them, to bring all the necessary help to Afghanistan, to North Afghanistan. So I accepted and I quit photography actually, because this was a part of the, I mean, as a professional, I wasn't able to work. The only thing I asked UN saying that, okay, I will do this, but I will have my camera always with me. I can't walk without my camera. It is for me, I take pictures. So in this 1 year, which I was like working with 10,000 Afghans, creating the food for works, and really concentrated on helping Afghans. My only connection with the world was the radio of the radio connection that we have at the UN cars or UN offices. It was no mobile phone, nothing. So one day I got a call from UN office from New York that has called New York Kabul. The New York Kabul called me emergently saying that it's very strange. A gentleman looking for you and saying that he's from National Geographic and he wants you to work for them. And I said, oh, thanks him saying that, no, I quit photography and thank you very much for offering. I don't work for you and it's finished for me. So it was really, that was meaning for me. After 1 year working with UN, I find that, well, I have done my job that they want to ask it, but I didn't want to continue. And one of the reasons was that in one of the big meetings of the UN with the very high level UN people, I have become a director of the operation, so I was always with them. One of them that he was helping a lot Afghanistan, and I asked him, why you help so much Afghanistan when you have been there? He laughed to me. I said, I've never been there, but I remember your pictures in Time magazine. This is the what make me connected to the Afghan people. And I said, wait a minute, you're doing all this incredible works for them because you were touched with one of my picture? He said, yes. So I stand up and I said, well, this is my resignation from UN. I'm going back to take picture because if I can touch people with my photograph, there are a lot of people that they can distribute food or make the roads. Let me go back, take pictures. But I have lost all my contacts with the professional world. When I came back to Paris, my office, there was this message again with the same guy saying that, okay, I got the message. He doesn't want to work for National Geographic. If he changed his mind, ask him to call this number. And I called the number. It was in Washington, National Geographic Director of Photography, saying that, oh, I'm glad you called it. We're looking for you. We want you to work for us. And we have following your works for years and years. And we want to give you a first assignment, which is Cairo. And that's how I started. That's how I came to National Geographic.
What year was that?
1991, actually.
Yeah, and we have a picture of all your National Geographic covers that we'll share with the audience. It's really an incredible history of work that you've done for the magazine. Our next question is from Humayun. How did your book, Azerbaijan, Elegance of Fire, come about?
You know, being in exile from Iran over 40 years, as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm from Tabriz, so from Iranian Azerbaijan. And there were two places in the world that being there, it was giving me the feeling of what the country was for me, Iran. One is Afghanistan because of the Persian background, because of the Rumi and the Hafiz, because you should know that even in the Afghan villages, they know better than our us, the Iranians, Rumi and Hafiz and Saadi. And this is traveling there in the villages was really touching me and bringing me back deep in the culture. The same is happening with Azerbaijan, because being in Baku or Azerbaijan, it was like I was in old Iran, the Iran of the before revolution. This is how was it. So I was coming here, and obviously not for tourism, not for fun, because I always keep going places to do the stories. So in the 90s, the Baku was the first city that they started against the Soviet Union. They had a big sitting in the city, and this was the first city in the Soviet Union, not in Central and Eastern Europe, that like Poland and everything. They have already started. But inside the Soviet Union, Baku was the first. And if you obviously the Soviet, what they have done, the Russian militaries, one night at midnight, they brought tanks on the square that the people were sitting or sleeping, you know, have just making demonstrations. And for 3 days they were there. The tanks rules over the people. 103 people were killed, and it was a disaster. I was able to come here to photograph from Paris, hitting in a train from Moscow to Baku under the Soviet. This was my first covering story of Azerbaijan. Then in 92, again, the war started with Armenia. There was a war going between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And I heard in Paris that there is one village in Karabakh that is called Khojali, and the Armenian forces has surrounded the city and has killed like hundreds of the people, men, women, or whatever, which was, you know, shocking. So I came again here and I went there and I find that this is true, that there have been a massacre in an Azerbaijani village in Karabakh, and Armenian forces has killed in one night. Later, we find out the number 603 people and wounded thousands of them, which I have photographed them and I see them and I talk to all of them. And I kept photographing the war till the whole Karabakh and the surrounding other 7 districts were occupied by the Armenian forces. Then I saw 1 million of the refugees coming from Azerbaijan, 1 million refugees out of a 9 million population. It was a lot. I mean, imagine suddenly, many of them, they have given like 10 hours or one day to leave without nothings. And they arrived here in Azerbaijan with nothings. So I start photographing these refugees. But still, I wanted to photograph what was the Azerbaijan of my childhood, when I was going with my families, traveling around and going this. So later on, that's how I came back here, only not about the photographing the war, not photographing the refugees, but just photographing the landscapes, which is, if you look to the book, it looks like Iran, a lot of those pictures. And then I published these 2 books. One is called Elegance of Fire, because Azerbaijan called Land of the Fire is Atropatene, or old name is meaning that the land of the fire. And another one which I published, which is called The Massacre of the Innocent. And this is all about the war, all about what I have seen from the beginning, when the Soviet armies attacked here and killed people, and then the Karabakh War and the 1 million refugees. So that's how these 2 books about, out of my 34 books, now I have 34 books, 2 of them is about Azerbaijan.
Fantastic. And earlier we were speaking about how since leaving Iran, you've managed to stay connected with Iran by staying in the countries surrounding Iran. So I think it shows your love for your homeland and all the surrounding countries.
This is a Persian saying that when you like something, you say that Doret begardam. You know this?
Yes.
Yeah, I turning around you, Doret begardam, and I'm over 40 years. I'm Doret Iran begardam. I'm turning around Iran. Actually, it's true. All the countries around Iran, I have been traveling all around for many times, actually.
Yes, wonderful. We have so many questions and so many comments, but I think we can end it with this one, which is a statement which kind of summarizes many of the comments we received. It's from Sarah, and she says, "Thank you so much for all you do for humanity. You are a true angel, and the world would be a much better place if we had more individuals like yourself in this world." I think I agree with Sarah, and we're so thankful that you have taken the time to be with us today for this conversation. I wanted to let all our viewers know that they can stay in touch with Mr. Deghati by visiting his website at rezaphoto.org, where you can find links to all his social media profiles, as well as more information on his many books, publications, and of course, his latest exhibitions and humanitarian projects. Mr. Deghati, thank you again for joining us today for this incredible opportunity to speak with you and for giving us the time out of your very, very busy schedule and world travels to be here today. And I want to also thank Dr.
Thank you very much. May I just add, first I want to thank Houman John that really created this fantastic face-to-face with me, like eye contact we had, you know, the soul. You got to my soul, actually. Thank you, Houman John, for this fantastic interview. I hope that we will meet once. The other thing that I really want to express here, that all my life and everything I'm doing is connecting the cultures, connecting people. And that's why one of the organizations that it's really mean for me, and I have in the past also, I have been always with them if they wanted, is your foundation, the Farhang Foundation. This is a fantastic place, fantastic. I know the founder, I know a lot of people working on it, and it's really important what you are doing. And I will be asking everybody listening this also help Farhang Foundation. Even the name is fantastic. Farhang is everything that we have is Farhang. Everything that relates us is Farhang, is culture. So thank you to you, Ali Reza, for organizing it, and also everybody that is in the Farhang Foundation in any position. Thank you very much.
It is our honor. We appreciate and thank you. I also have to thank everyone who has joined us here from all over the world to be with us for this great talk. We will remind everyone that the full recording of this talk will also be available on all Farhang social media platforms, as well as on farhang.org. And we look forward to welcoming you all again to the next talk series. Please visit farhang.org for our latest programs and events. Once again, thank you, Mr. Deghati. We really are grateful for you. And thank you, Dr. Sarshar, for being here today for this wonderful conversation. It could have gone on for hours and hours. I could listen to you speak about all the work you've done. It's really incredible and so inspiring. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and farewell for now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.